Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. And I call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. and note that all members of the committee are present except Councillor O'Leary. The township of Adjala-Tosorontio is situated on the lands within Treaty 18, being the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. This land is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We acknowledge Indigenous peoples as stewards of the land, and we honor their resilience as well as their culture, and of our shared respect for the lands, plants, animals, and waterways, which sustains us all. We recognize the injustices against Indigenous peoples and are mindful that the decisions of government impact our shared land and all the inhabitants. We commit to reconciliation as a journey, foster Indigenous cultural awareness and educational opportunities, establish respectful and healthy relations with Indigenous peoples, continue to steward the land and its inhabitants, and to cultivate an inclusive community for all. The purpose of this evening's hearing is to consider the applications listed on the agenda requesting a consent or minor variance to the township's zoning bylaw. The input we receive from agencies, the public, and staff is important to ensure the committee makes well-informed planning decisions. For each application listed on today's agenda, the hearing procedure will be as follows. Staff will provide a brief explanation of the application. The applicant or their agent will be asked to provide any comments. Comments from members of the public will be heard or read aloud by the Secretary-Treasurer. Following all submissions, the committee will consider all comments and agenda materials when making a decision on an application. Should you wish to be notified of the decision, you must file a written request with the Secretary-Treasurer. The second item is adoption of today's agenda. The recommendation reads that the agenda for the Committee of Adjustment hearing held on Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 be adopted as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? John and Horace. All those in favor? Motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? There are none. Next item is adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. The minutes for the Committee of Adjustment meeting, February 19th, 2025, to be adopted as presented. Can I get a mover, please? Julius? Horace, seconder? All those in favor? Carried. John wasn't at the meeting, so yeah, that's fine. The submissions to be heard. Submission A/02/25, the property at 8273, the 10th Side Road of Adjala-Tosorontio. The purpose to permit 6.5% ground coverage, whereas bylaw 0356 currently permits a maximum of 5%. Would staff like to provide a brief explanation of the application, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nancy and William Watson proposes a 49.8 meter square addition for a bedroom and a bathroom, plus 35 meter square for covered porches, bringing total ground coverage to 320 meter square. Their property has split zoning. They have Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside and Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Core zoning. With the addition entirely in the Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Core zone, the bylaw permits only 5% ground coverage, made them to become non-compliant for that standard. If, as our standard says, we have to measure the ground coverage for the individual district, like for the individual zoning, we can't measure the ground coverage for the whole lot, like a combination of or average of both the zones. So that's why they are like in non-compliance. But if we would have measured it for the whole lot, they would have been under 5%. They are meeting all the 4 tests for minor variance applications. And the proposal involves expanding the existing dwelling rather than adding a separate structure. So it helps to maintain visual continuity and prevent scattered development. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant or agent like to provide any comments regarding the application? Were there any members of the public present who would like to provide a comment? Yes, ma'am? That's fine. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Or did we receive any comments from the public?
No, we didn't receive any comment.
Written comments? Are there any questions from the members of the committee? No? All right, we'll now move on to a decision for application A/02/25. Prior to conducting the vote, I will read the decision for the committee's consideration. In the matter of subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, and in the matter of concession 4E, part lot 10 in the township of Adjala-Tosorontio, county of Simcoe, and in the matter of the application of Nancy and William Watson as owners of the aforesaid land for a minor variance under the Planning Act. And whereas the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio's Committee of Adjustment, having conferred with all applicable agencies and persons as prescribed by the Planning Act, and having had regard to those matters prescribed in the Planning Act, has decided that the request for minor variance of an increased lot coverage be, and can I have a mover for approval? Or John, a seconder, Horace? All those in favor? Motion is carried. The decision, I'll just read the decision now. The application seeking relief from zoning bylaw 0356 as amended to permit 6.5% ground coverage, whereas bylaw 03-56 currently permits a maximum of 5%, be approved. The reasons for the decision: the proposal does conform to the official plan. The proposal does conform to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The variance is minor in nature, and the variance is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lands. Thank you. Okay. So thank you. If Mrs. Watson, if you would like to get a copy of that, you can refer to the staff and they'll get a written copy of the decision from the committee. You're welcome. Thank you for coming out as well. Okay. Our next item, application B/04/25, the property 7223 Concession Road 4, Adjala-Tosorontio. The purpose to permit the severance of a 0.415 hectare or 1.03 acres parcel for residential use. Can staff like to provide a brief explanation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morgan Planning and Development, on behalf of Somerville Nursery, proposed to sever a 0.415 hectare parcel with 60-meter frontage on Concession Road 2 for rural residential dwelling, serviced by on-site sewage and water. The retained parcel will continue to be used as a tree nursery. The proposal aligns with PPS criteria for residential lot creation in the rural areas and supported by county staff with setbacks of over 280 meters from the Greenland designation. Risk Management Official and NVCA has no objections, and the application complies with Township's official plan, avoiding continuous residential development and meets all zoning requirements for size and frontage. Thank you.
Okay. Would the applicant or agent like to provide any comments regarding the application?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jonathan Pock. I'm a senior planner at Morgan Planning and Development. I do have a brief presentation. I will just pull it up on the screen here. I'm here before you this evening with respect to consent application number B/04/25 for the subject property located at 7223 Concession Road 2. The location of the subject property is shown in this slide here, generally located at the southeast corner of 20th Side Road and 17th Side Road. I'd just like to draw your attention to the limits of baseboarding on the right hand side of the screen, as well as kind of that grade area south of Borden would be the Tioga settlement area. As mentioned, the subject property is located on the east side of Concession Road 2, southwest of the intersection of Concession 2 and 20th Side Road. The subject property does have a lot area of 41.5 hectares, approximately 599 meters of frontage on the Concession Road 2. The property is currently vacant and is used for an agricultural use, specifically by Somerville Nurseries for the growing of Christmas trees, various nursery stock, and other tree seedlings. This is just an aerial image of the subject property. As you can see, it's currently vacant. There are no buildings or structures. There's some forested lands in the northwest corner, as well as a small pond area. And then, as mentioned, you can just see the rows of various trees that are grown on site. In terms of the applicable planning documents that apply to the subject lands, on the right-hand side is an excerpt from the township's official plan. As you can see, it's entirely designated rural. And on the left-hand side, just illustrating that the subject property is zoned rural, which is in that light green, and the open space conservation and MVCA fill areas are that darker green with kind of that green bubble around them. The purpose of the application is to sever one new rural residential lot fronting onto Concession Road 2, and they'll have one retained lot. The access is proposed to be from Concession Road 2, and a summary of the proposed lot fabric is shown in the table on the screen, just illustrating the lot area and frontage dimensions. As part of the application, we did complete an MDS calculation. There was some livestock identified. I believe it was to the west of the subject property, and included in our application submission just demonstrated that the new lot would comply with the required setbacks from that livestock. This is just an image illustrating the proposed lot fabric. The larger retained lot is shown in yellow, which would generally contain the agricultural land and would continue to be used as an agricultural use and for the growing of nursery stock for as part of Somerville Nurseries business. The smaller severed lot is shown in green in the bottom left-hand corner, and it generally still has frontage onto Concession Road 2. As part of our planning application, we did submit a planning justification report, which was included in this evening's agenda package, which illustrated consistency and conformity to the applicable planning documents. And just as a brief summary, one new rural residential lot is being sought by our client, and the larger retained lot would contain the existing agricultural use. We've submitted that planning justification report as part of our application submission, and has demonstrated consistency and conformity with those planning documents. As mentioned, we did prepare that MDS calculation, which was included as an attachment to our planning report, and we've concluded that the consent meets the criteria under the Planning Act. We have reviewed the staff report this evening and support staff's recommendation to approve the application and agree to the recommended conditions. That concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Through the chair, just wondering what the purpose of the property is going to be. Is it just going to go up for sale, or is it for somebody in the family to build on?
Thank you for your question. Through the chair, at this time, the severed lot would be intended for a future rural residential use. There's no immediate plans to develop on that, and I'm not sure if it will go to a family member or be marketed for sale. Can't speak to that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we receive any other comments? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A comment was received from Cheryl and Simone Gagne from 7171 Concession Road 2 today on March 19, 2025. The comment is as follows. As a direct abutting neighbor to the proposed site of severance, we are opposing the application requesting the creation of a new 0.41 hectare rural residential lot at 7223 Concession Road 2 at Adjala-Tosorontio. Over the past 18 years of living at our residence, the wildlife has decreased dramatically. Somerville Nurseries installed an 8 feet tall fence around the entire perimeter of the tree nursery approx 7 to 8 years ago. limiting all the access for wildlife to roam freely. We no longer see deer, wild turkeys, foxes, etc. in the fields around us, which has the sole purpose of purchasing our home in this area. The proposed severance would be fenced on two sides of the lot, north and east side of Somerville Nurseries, with the 8 feet fencing that currently exists, and a privacy fence would be required between us and the new lot to maintain some sort of seclusion, what we have become accustomed to. I couldn't imagine purchasing a newly severed lot in the middle of a rural setting with the fence on 3 sides of the property. This is not country living. It seems strange that Somerville Nurseries would like to sever land that is currently being farmed and producing revenue for their business that would profit more over time. To sell the land for fast cash and removing trees for infrastructure is not beneficial for the environment or the longevity of the business. It is not ethical to allow a single entity to profit at our expense. Thank you.
Does anyone have any comments on that?
Say the fence is there to protect what they're growing. There's a high fence, but it's there to protect the seedlings that they have.
The agricultural.
The agricultural
use.
farmers will put up fences to.
Okay, did we have any other comments or questions?
No, Madam Chair.
I was just gonna ask if they. Sorry about that. Just wondering if you know where the potential driveway might be for that lot?
Thank you, Chair. I believe there may be an existing entrance off of Concession Road 2 already. If not, there would be, if there isn't in the location of the severed lot, it would be subject to a new entrance, and that's outlined in the staff report requiring a new entrance permit. So, we can take note of those comments that the adjacent property owner submitted, and perhaps through an entrance permit, we could maybe establish that on the opposite side, like further away from them. That's something we can explore. And I guess, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I would put the driveway to the north just because of the knoll. When you're right there, it's hard to see traffic coming from the south. So I'm not sure where the neighbor was that was disputing this application, but for safety, I would say the driveway should be to the north of the property.
Yeah. The chair. So I'm not understanding the comments that were read from the letter about the fencing. Okay. So if they're severing off the property, are they gonna remove the fence around the existing severance, or the severance that's coming up?
Through Madam Chair, to Deputy Mayor Locks, the agricultural property fence would move further away. It will move further away from their property, the Miss Simone Gagnes, but it will be surrounding the new proposed severed lots boundary.
On 2 sides.
Yes, on 2 sides, on the north and the west side.
Okay, do we have any other discussion? No? I'm sorry, I have to look at this. We'll now move on to a decision for application B/04/25. I'll read the decision for committee's consideration. In the matter of subsection 451 of the Planning Act, and in the matter of concession 2, West Part Lot 20, RP 51R2480, Part 2, in the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio, County of Simcoe, and in the matter of the application of Somerville Nurseries, Inc. as owners of the aforesaid land for consent under the Planning Act. And whereas the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio's Committee of Adjustment, having conferred with all applicable agencies and persons as prescribed by the Planning Act, and having had regard to those matters prescribed in the Planning Act, has decided that the request for consent to sever a lot B. Do I have a mover and a seconder for approval? John? Horace? All those in favor? 3. Julius, you're voting?
I'm not for it.
You're not voting? All right. So it's 3 is carried. Thank you. Thank you. The decision is that consent application number B04-25 be approved in accordance with the sketches attached and subject to the following conditions. That the applicant meets all financial requirements of the municipality, that a registerable description of the subject lands be drawn up to the satisfaction of the municipality, that applicant owner submit one paper copy and a digital copy of a draft reference plan of survey to be reviewed and approved by the township and other agency which shows the future building envelope for all structures to ensure compliance with zoning bylaw requirements, that a municipal entrance permit is approved and obtained, and that the foregoing conditions be fulfilled within 2 years of the date of the notice of the decision of the committee. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everyone, have a great evening.
Thank you. We now move to the next item, application B/05/25, the property at 1708 Concession Road 2, Adjala-Tosorontio. The purpose is validation of the title. Could we please ask Kartik, would you please provide a brief explanation of this application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This application aims to correct a legal issue with the property's title. In 1998, the property was transferred from Helen Berman to Daniel David O'Connell and Lauren Allen McNally. Since then, the property has remained under Ms. McNally's ownership. The issue arose from the original transfer when Helen Berman kept a small portion of the property, Part 11, but didn't obtain the required approval consent from the Committee of Adjustment for all parts of the property. This caused a Planning Act violation, rendering the transfer invalid. However, Part 13 was properly transferred with the necessary approval. The mistake wasn't identified at the time, so the property's title is technically defective. As confirmed by Township's legal counsel, this situation is typically for a validation of title process, and there is no evidence that the Planning Act was intentionally bypassed. The property has been continuously owned and used by Ms. McKinley since the transfer. Also, regarding the condition of approval mentioned in the staff report, the condition number 4, requiring a new reference plan, is not applicable to this validation of title application, so no new lots or boundaries are being created. This was an error in the report and does not reflect in the copy of decision. And this application is appropriate to fix the technical issue with the property's title. Thank you.
Would the applicant or agent like to provide any comments regarding the application? Yes, sir. Could we have your name, please?
My name is Lawrence Hull. I'm a lawyer with the law firm of Smith & Associates in Tottenham. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I believe the staff report accurately refers to what our application for a validation consists of. I just want to stress, however, because it has a B number on the application, that we are not asking for a severance. This is not a severance application. It's an unusual application. Validations under Section 57 don't happen very often. I've only done a handful in my career, and I've been practicing for 35 years. But it's a procedure to correct the title problem. And basically what happened, there was a reference plan done, and we received parts 10, 12, and 13 on Plan 51R 27442, but there was another Part 11. The lawyers at the time messed up. They registered the transfers in the wrong order. The lawyer at the time should have dealt with Part 11 first, prior to conveying the property to our clients. However, it wasn't caught at the time, and it's only been discovered since Mrs. McNally's husband died, and we were looking at the title to the property and discovered that there was this Planning Act violation, and part of the property's not been converted to land titles conversion qualified. In order to fix that, we need to get a validation certificate and do a further application to the Land Registry Office to convert it from land registry to the land title system. And that's why we're here tonight, is to get a validation certificate. No new plans are being made for the property. It's purely a corrective measure to validate the title that Mrs. McNally's had since 1998. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have any questions from the committee?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions or comments from the
No, this application is usually not circulated to public.
Yeah.
So it doesn't follow, the other applications follow the procedure, so no public comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from members of the committee? No? Seems to be quite straightforward, I think. So we will now move on to a decision for application B/05/25. Prior to conducting the vote, I'll read the decision for committee's consideration. In the matter of subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, and in the matter of concession 1, East Part Lot 6, RP 51 R27442, parts 10, 12, 13, in the township of Adjala-Tosorontio, county of Simcoe, and in the matter of the application of Lorraine Ellen McNally as owner of the aforesaid land for consent under the Planning Act. And whereas the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio's Committee of Adjustment, having confirmed with all applicable agencies and persons as prescribed by the Planning Act, and having had regard to those matters prescribed in the Planning Act, has decided that the request of consent for validation of Title B. And do I have a mover and seconder for approval? Horace and John, all those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. The decision that consent application number B/05/25 be approved in accordance with the sketches attached and subject to the following conditions: that the applicant meets all financial requirements of the municipality, that a registrable description of the subject lands be drawn up to the satisfaction of the municipality, that the title be consolidated under one property identification number, that the foregoing conditions be fulfilled within 2 years of the date of the notice of the decision of the committee. Thank you very much. And we have one more application on the agenda, number B/03/25, the property at 9085 River Road West, Adjala-Tosorontio. The purpose to permit the severance of a 0.4 hectare or 0.98 acre parcel for residential use. We will now move on to application B/03/25. And Kartik, would you please give us an explanation of the application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant Tony Prasad proposed to sever a 0.4 hectare lot with 66.71 meters of frontage on County Road 1 for a new residential dwelling with on-site sewage and water services. The retained 1.49 hectare lot will keep the existing dwelling. The application aligns with PPS 2024 with no objections from county staff or NVCA. A natural heritage evaluation confirms the lot is directed away from the hazard lands and recommends the development agreement for mitigation measures recommended as a condition of approval. Also, an entrance permit is required as a condition of approval with reports such as stormwater brief, grading plan, erosion control, and servicing plan to be submitted to the county's satisfaction. So this is also included in the condition of approval. Overall, the consent application meets the criteria for the severance. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant or agent like to provide any comments regarding this application?
Good evening. I'm Jack Weekly, the son-in-law of Tony Prasad, the owner of the property. The purpose of this severance is so that myself and my wife and our daughter can build a house on the property, which would be at the back of my father-in-law's property. If anyone has any questions, then I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions from the committee?
There that I was worried about.
Yes, you were concerned, yes.
Yeah. Driveway was, I guess, that's a condition.
Yeah, there's a long list of conditions
Yeah.
here that we have to,
Yeah.
so, Thank you. Are there any members of the public who are any other comments?
There was a written comment received from Susan Miller, 9198 County Road 1 on March 18, 2025. The comment as follows. We are writing to express our concerns about the application for the severance. Our concerns are with elevation and grading changes to the property regarding building a house into the hill and appeasing septic requirements. In the past, our neighbor on the west side built a house in the hill and had to add over 4 feet of elevation to their backyard to appease septic requirements. This drains water from their property onto ours and causes flooding. Now, the potential of our east neighbor property doing the same this will result in our property to be lower grade, causing major flooding. The subject property and our property water table is extremely high and should not be tampered with. And an additional house on the property will disturb the natural drainage flow of the valley. We have a board well located on the southeast side of property which concerns us the placement of an additional septic system. We would like to be notified on the findings and decision, please. Thank you.
So those are concerns about the drainage on the site. Do we have conditions that deal with?
Thank you, Madam Chair. RMO has no concerns, NVCA has no concerns, and for the entrance permit, the county is demanding conditions of like stormwater brief, grading plan, erosion control, and servicing plan, and that would be applicable to the whole new proposed lot. And also at the building permit stage, there will be a grading plan that will be looked into to make sure that there will be no flooding. Thank you.
Okay, so all of that should be taken care of when the planning is done and the approvals are given.
It is part of the county's approval. County's entrance permit requires all those studies, and if they will satisfy all those studies, only then the consent will be, like consent certificate will be issued within 2 years. Otherwise, this approval will be null and void. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we will now move on to a decision for application B/03/25. Prior to conducting the vote, I will read the decision for the committee's consideration. In the matter of subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, and in the matter of concession 1, East Part Lot 15 in the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio, County of Simcoe, and in the matter of the application of Tony Persaud as owner of the aforesaid land for consent under the Planning Act, and whereas the Township of Adjala-Tosorontio's Committee of Adjustment, having conferred with all applicable agencies and persons as prescribed by the Planning Act, and having had regard to those matters prescribed in the Planning Act, has decided that the request for consent to sever a lot for residential purposes be, and can I get a mover and a seconder for approval?
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. Sorry to interrupt. There is somebody on virtually who is attending the meeting. They want to speak.
Oh, fine.
I'm
Yes.
sorry about it. They just joined.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they are not able to connect properly, so they are not. Sorry.
All right, it's we're at a critical moment here. We're about to vote if they can't connect. All right.
We can send a message and wait for a minute, please. Thank you.
Only if they asked for a copy of the decision, I think. Well, they are? Then that would, then the staff. Hmm. Okay, can we proceed then if we're having technical difficulties there. It's been a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we already sent the message and nobody's responding, so we can proceed. Thank you.
All right, everyone's still aware of what we're doing here? Voting on the creation of consent to sever a lot for residential purposes. Do we have a mover in favor? Julius? John seconding, all in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. Okay, thank you. The decision that consent application number B/03/25 be approved in accordance with the sketches attached and subject to the following conditions. That the applicant meets all financial requirements of the municipality, that a registrable description of the land subject be drawn up, that applicant owners submit one paper copy and a digital copy of a draft reference plan of survey to be reviewed and approved by the township and other agency which shows the future building envelope for all structures to ensure compliance with zoning bylaw requirements, that a county's entrance permit is approved and obtained, the applicant shall transfer to the corporation of the county of Simcoe at no cost a fee simple, unencumbered interest in a road allowance widening along the entire frontage of the subject property adjacent to County Road 1, ensuring a 15.25 meter right-of-way from its center line. The applicant shall enter into a development agreement to implement the recommendations of the Natural Heritage Evaluation prepared by Christowin Consulting, dated February 3rd, 2025, to the satisfaction of the township, including but not limited to ensuring compliance with the Endangered Species Act and associated regulations in effect, restricting vegetation removal between April 1st and August 31st, unless a qualified ecologist confirms no active nests, roosts, or maternity colonies, and silt sediment fencing installed along the entire perimeter of the disturbance area prior to site alteration and maintained throughout construction until a stable surface cover is established. That the foregoing conditions be fulfilled within 2 years of the date of the notice of the decision of the committee. Thank you. Right. That's the end of the applications for this evening. Do we have any new business?
No, Madam Chair.
Any general business to discuss? No?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, it is 6:37 and I'm adjourning the meeting today. Thank you very much for coming.